Welcome to today's session for Legal Futures on Service Charges Advice for Landlords and Tenants. I'm Sarah Thompson-Copsey. Today we're going to be looking at service charges in the context of both residential and commercial property. We're not going to go through absolutely every part of service charges. Obviously, every service charge clause is very different. But what I wanted to look at was the impact of current issues, the impact of current law, current cases on both landlords and tenants when it comes to service charges, both residential and commercial. And on the whole, we're going to be starting by looking at commercial, and then we're going to move into look at residential, because what we say about commercial has the same impact for residential service charges, and then that residential service charges are then overlaid by a statutory impact. So we're going to be looking at why the lease terms are still paramount, and it's particularly important to bear in mind when you look at residential leases. It's so easy to think, well, residential leases are subject to statutory control, and so therefore we need to concentrate on what the statute says. But lease terms are paramount, and the cases make that absolutely clear. If something is not in the service charge clause, you cannot recover the cost of it as a landlord, and as a tenant, you don't need to think any more than simply saying you're not entitled to that. I want to look at what due proportion means in the context of both residential and commercial, and who can actually decide what is meant by the due proportion. Can anybody decide what is meant, and should there be any guidance around due proportion? We're going to be looking too at certificates of costs, certificates of service costs, that is, rather than litigation costs, and who prepares them, and what they cover, and what they actually mean in terms of bindingness. Are they final? Can service charges be open? So we're also going to be looking at undoing or unwrapping the service charge costs and saying we can now insert in other costs. Is that possible? And can you add items to the costs that the lease allows you to recover services that the costs of services that you've carried out as the landlord? Now, service charges are always an area of huge dispute between landlords and tenants, or have the potentiality for being an area of huge dispute between landlords and tenants. Tenants tend to think that landlords are trying to demand costs that have no real relationship to the services that are carried out. In other words, that landlords are trying to profiteer from the service charge costs, and that landlords don't care about how much the costs are. They're not considerate, and they don't think about perhaps going elsewhere because they know that tenants are going to have to pay those costs. Landlords equally often think that tenants are being deliberately obstructive and don't want to pay the costs, and are taking tiny points when actually the landlords have done the best they possibly can.